Hold on. You're the most engaging person I've ever met.
I will do that to you.
Okay.
Do what?
Listen up. We're on page 962, sections 33.1, talking about the nervous system. Your nervous system is the way that your cells can communicate with one another. So what they do is they send electrical signals, and I'm going to show you today how that works, so that one part of the body can tell another part of the body something. If somebody touches your finger, there's an electrical signal that's sent down your arm, up your spinal cord to your brain, and then your brain goes, oh, somebody just touched my finger. And then your brain can tell you how to react, and then you can make some sense of your environment and so forth. Yes?
How did that work the other day when that guy had his nose flipped around? And they said when he scratched his nose, felt like he was scratching his forehead?
Yeah, because the nerves, the brain had learned that anything coming down those nerves were coming from his forehead. And if you suddenly move the nose, the nerves don't know. They still think they're on the forehead. So for a while, he'd touch his nose, and the nerves would be telling his brain that his forehead's being touched. But the brain can learn that, wait a sec, it's not the forehead, it's the nose, and the brain will change over time. Isn't that cool? So, here is, Bennett, I'm up here.
I know.
Here is what a nerve cell looks like. A nerve cell is called a neuron. N-E-U-R-O-N, a neuron. And a neuron's got different parts to it. It's got this area here called dendrites. They look like antlers. And they're for receiving signals from other cells. Neurons will communicate with one another. So those are little receivers. And then it's got the regular cell body. This is just the normal part of the cell, just like any other cell we studied. It's got a nucleus. It's got mitochondrions. It's got Golgi apparatus. It's got endoplasmic reticulum. Remember all those things we studied? All that's right there. And then it's got this long extension called an axon. The axon can be real long. You have axons that go all the way from your fingertips all the way to your spinal cord. Giraffes have axons that go all the way from their spinal cord all the way down to their toe. They're like 12 feet long. One long extension. And the axon is covered by special cells. You see those little cells there? They're called Schwann cells, after the guy who discovered them. And they act as insulation. Schwann. They act as insulation. They keep the signal inside the axon. They keep it from crossing over. They act as the same thing that the rubber around this cord acts as, insulation, so the signal doesn't come out. And it also allows the signal to move faster. These little Schwann cells make it so the signal moves very fast. They've actually measured the speed. An electrical signal will go through the axon at up to about 600 miles per hour. So if somebody touches your finger, an electrical signal goes up the axon to your brain, and it almost feels instantaneous.
But it's not?
But it's not. There is a split second there between the time somebody touches your finger and the time you feel it. Not much.
Is it possible for someone to be faster?
What's that?
Possible for someone to be faster?
Yeah, it probably varies a little bit. Some people's are a little faster than others. Other people will probably be a little quicker. Now, at the end, whoops, let me go back. At the end of the axon, it usually branches out like this. Everybody look up here. At the end of the axon, it branches out like this, and there are little axon endings, which we're going to study in just a minute, that transfer the signal on to the next neuron. Usually those axon endings are touching another neuron, a dendrite or something like that. so the signal can be transferred. Now, this is called a reflex arc. It's a very simple, the simplest movements in the human body or in any organism are called reflexes. They happen without you having to think. And borrow your desk, I'll show you a simple reflex. It's called the knee-jerk reflex. They test it whenever you go to the doctor's office. And what you do, you sit here, and the doctor will take his little hammer, and I can just use this mouse, it works just as good. And they hit you in the right place, and you get a little kick. See that? I'm not a doctor, but I was pre-med.
You're switching the slides.
Are you really?
I'll go back.
No, you're not. No, it's because.
Oh, see that one? Don't worry about the slides, I'll go back. Oh, that was a good one. And you can try this at home. It's easy to do. Do you want to sit on your desk right now and try it?
Yes!
You got to hit it right here. You can even do it with your fingers if you're good. Oh, that was a good one. You don't want to try it, Drew?
So which part of my is it?
Right there, right about there.
Oh, do anything. Do a little bit.
Harder.
Oh, really?
I don't feel like my leg's doing it all.
Sorry, this did not.
Practice at home, you might find it. You got to let your leg just hang. It can't be.
You're just like punching my leg.
There you go.
Alright,
I keep my leg backwards.
No, you're like on my shin.
Let it hang. There you go. See that?
You don't want to do it.
Weird.
Okay, let me show you how it works.
Oh,
Bro, can you come do it?
Yeah, I need the extra.
That's not
How
good.
does this do it?
Ready?
Can't say Mollis.
Close. Well, then you can zoom in and out, right?
Drew, different.
Yeah, I know.
It's like
go.
impossible.
Why?
Because you've been like,
And my
zoomed in
phone's
so
perfect.
far the entire time.
Higher.
So that's where it's running.
Yeah.
That was
Still
good.
recording?
Try it.
You know you can zoom in and out, right?
Yes, I know.
You were like zooming like on a spot.
Here's what's happening.
Sure.
Let's go back here and learn about it.
Let's go back, let's go back and learn.
Tucker's got no reflexes. He's dead. He's a zombie.
I crushed it. Actually, I used it.
All right, listen. Here's what's happening there.
Video.
Listen up.
Really?
Listen up. When you hit the knee, the patella, which is this right under the patella, you cause. Listen. Guys. When you hit the patella, you cause a stretching of the tendon, and that causes a signal to be sent down this sensory neuron here, and it goes into the spinal cord, where it synapses. That word synapse means connects, where it synapses with another neuron. Hold on, my mouse is acting up.
That's probably why.
That could be it.
And the synapse, which we'll study in a minute, causes the signal to be sent to this neuron, which is called an interneuron. And then there's another synapse, which causes it to be sent to another neuron called the motor neuron. And then the motor neuron activates the muscle. The muscle contracts, and it's actually, in the knee-jerk reflex, it activates these muscles on top, the quads. And the quads contract and pull the leg forward. So if you hit that, you get a signal going down the sensory neuron to the spinal cord, synapsing at the spinal cord, and then coming back down a motor neuron to this muscle. The muscle contracts, and the leg comes forward. All that happens in just a second. And why would you have that? Well, it's a walking reflex. Have you ever been walking up the stairs, carrying a box or something, and you can't see when the last step is?
Yeah.
And so you go up and you think there's another step coming, so you leave your knee kind of bent, and there's not another step there. Well, what happens is the gravity straightens out the leg a little bit. It's the same effect as when you hit there. And it causes a reflex that will kick your foot forward, so you'll kick it out and catch yourself and not fall. And you've probably felt that before if you've ever been walking up the stairs with a box, you kind of get to the top and you go, huh? And you caught yourself and you're like, whoa, what was that? And then you look around to see if anyone's looking because you looked really weird when you were doing that and you don't want anyone to see that. And so that's how reflexes work. They cause you to act quickly. Just like if you stub your toe, you will, or step on something hot, put your hand on something hot, you'll pull it back quickly. There are all sorts of reflexes. Here's video footage of one. This is called the withdrawal reflex. If you ever touch something hot, you'll pull your hand off right away.
In a reflex arc, sensory information is processed at the level of the spinal cord, resulting in action without involvement of the brain. For example, if one's fingers are burned by a candle, the hand that receives the painful stimulus is rapidly removed from the flame with a jerking motion. At the same time, the brain is receiving information indicating that a painful event occurred in the hand. It is important to understand that although the brain may perceive the painful stimulus, the reflex arc acts to retract the hand without direct input from the brain.
So here we go. The hand touches, let me just rewind this a little. The hand is over a flame. The signal comes down. You can see this yellow signal traveling down the sensory neuron, into the spinal cord, through this little green interneuron, and then back down this blue motor neuron. Causes the muscle to contract, the biceps muscle, and that pulls the arm away. All that happens real fast. It takes longer to actually feel the pain, because feeling happens in your brain. And the signal has to go all the way up to your brain, which involves a couple other neurons. And so actually, you're probably familiar with this. If you lean on something hot, like a stove, you'll pull your arm away before you feel it hurt. And you're like, oh, you know, it kind of scares you. You're acting without knowing why. That's a reflex. Let's see this. I don't know what.
The simplest input-output relationship is a reflex arc. Reflex arcs involve both the PNS and the CNS. A reflex is an automatic, involuntary response to a stimulus.
That's lame. Let's not watch that. Now, let me tell you how a signal moves down a neuron. How does an electrical signal move? How does the body, the cell, cause electricity? It's a little bit different than the wiring that's in the walls here. And I've been able to best explain it through this little video. Now it's very complicated. See if you can hang with me. We call the electrical impulse that moves down a neuron an action potential. See those words? Action potential. Here's a neuron.
How does an action potential occur? When a neuron is not transmitting a signal, there is a separation of charge across its membrane.
Okay, let me do the talking here. Let me show you what's going on. Okay. Now, whoops. Why did I do that? I did something very bad. Okay. Here we go. All right. If we go back, here we see this is the axon. Those are the Schwann cells. But if we look at the axon itself, which is there, we're looking in between the Schwann cells so we can see the axon clearly. There are charged particles in and around the axon. And the ones we're interested in are sodium. See, it says Na. I don't know if you can see this very well. Na is sodium. That's a sodium atom. And sodium atoms have a positive charge to them. Now, there are other atoms inside that are negative. And it makes it so the outside of the axon is positively charged because the sodium ions are positive, and the inside is negatively charged. But watch what happens here. When an electrical signal comes along, these positively charged sodiums are going to move inside the axon. Do you see them moving in?
No.
What happens, and what it's not showing, is there's little doors here that open and let the sodiums come in. The sodiums are in high concentration out here and in low concentration in here. So when these little doors open, the sodiums are going to rush in by diffusion. We learned that earlier in the year. So watch now, here comes the signal. Y'all who aren't paying attention here, you're going to be lost. Watch. Here comes the signal coming along. Sodiums rush in. Now all of a sudden it's positive on the inside. Do you see that? It went from positive outside, now we're positive inside. Because the sodiums came in. Well, when it's positive on the inside here, that stimulates the next doors to open. These doors sense that positive charge, and they'll open. So guess what will happen then?
The next doors.
Sodiums rush in here.
And the next doors.
And then the next doors, and the next doors, it's like a domino effect. So watch this, watch the pluses coming to the inside all the way down. And so if you kind of blur your eyes and look at it, it looks like it's a positive charge moving from left to right. In actuality, the positive charges are going up and down. So it's very commonly described as a wave of positive charge moving down. Because if you ever think about an ocean wave, the way an ocean wave works is the water itself is just going up and down. You ever been floating out on a raft and a wave comes by, and when the wave comes by you go up and down. You don't go sideways unless you're right by the shore when the wave is crashing, but that's something different. You go up and down. The particles of the water are all going up and down. The only thing that's traveling across is the energy. And that's what we have here, a wave of positive charge that travels downward, and just like a domino effect, it moves, doop, 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 and it's due to these sodium ions moving into the membrane.
What are the ions in the middle?
Now the ions in the middle are called potassium, and what they do is they take the place of the sodium for a split second, and then the cell puts them back. And that's something that you don't really have to worry about. We study it more in AP biology.
So the only point of them switching is to open the next door?
Yes.
Sure, let's just move on.
Basically, yes.
How happens when the last door, when at the last part? When
What happens when it reaches the end? Is that what you're asking? Yes! That's what I was going to do next. So that's it. And this moves at, again, 700 miles an hour. You want to see?
600, I thought you said.
600. Ready? Pew!
Let me show you what mine move 900.
That's not
Pew!
Wrong.
It's clock. It's like 250.
Do you guys see that? Measuring this?
You moved 900.
See, here they're describing it in your book. Sodium's moving in, potassium's moving out, and so forth.
That video helps better.
The video's better, yeah. Oh wait, let's see what this one is. I haven't seen this.
I don't watch that.
Your volume's down.
As the action potential travels along the motor neuron, a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine,
No, this is no good.
Yeah, we're good.
or
Okay, so here's what happens when it gets to the end. The signal gets to the end, and remember at the end I said we had these things called axon endings? Whoops.
Stimulus.
These things are still running. Weird. At the end, the signal goes down and hits these axon endings. Now I'm going to show you the axon endings up close. Are you ready for the axon endings up close?
Yep.
Yep.
What if I say?
Okay. Here the axon, the energy comes down, and at the end of the axon are little bubbles, little vesicles we call them. And the vesicles contain chemicals called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are chemicals that will be excreted out of the end. What happens is these little bubbles, when the signal reaches the end, it causes these little bubbles to move down to the edge of the membrane and release their contents. And these little chemicals, they show them as blue dots here, are proteins or molecules that will attach to doorways that are on the next neuron. And those doorways will open up, and sodium will rush in, and you'll get a new signal start. It causes the signal to move on to the next neuron, and it happens real quickly. Yes?
How fast do those vesicles move?
They move fast.
Nice.
These molecules move real fast because, like, think of the picture of your house
Yeah,
in your head. Picture your house.
Got it.
You just had communication between about 1,000 neurons there. Okay, that's what thoughts are. Thoughts are neurons communicating with each other. We don't know exactly how it works, but when you're sitting there thinking, think of the words to the national anthem in your head. Oh, thinking is the movement of electricity around from neuron to neuron. They're jumping up to maybe 5, 6, 7,000 neurons just interacting to produce the simplest thoughts. Yes?
It's kind of a random question, but not really. Do other animals like think about like other stuff like we do?
Not as intensely, but yes,
daydream?
they can. Daydream, I don't know.
I can daydream.
Video footage.
Marsh. Seems staring out there. All
Video footage, watch. We call this communication, by the way, it's called a synapse. This is a synapse. A synapse is a connection between two neurons. Graham, stay with me. Just don't talk.
When a nerve impulse fires down an axon, it eventually reaches a synapse, the narrow gap between two neurons. Here, the action potential triggers the release of special chemicals that quickly diffuse across the synapse. These chemicals, called neurotransmitters, bind to protein receptors on the adjacent neuron. This opens channels which trigger a new action potential. In this way, the body transmits impulses between the many cells of our nervous system.
This clues us in as to the way some drugs work. If you took a drug that attached to that receptor, you would get signals firing in your nerve cells
What kind of drug?
when they weren't supposed to fire. And that's how drugs that cause hallucinogenics work. They're chemicals that stick to those receptors and cause nerve cells to fire when they shouldn't be firing. And so you see things that aren't there. Hear things that aren't there.
So that would be involved with
Hallucinogenics, that's how they work.
Action potentials arriving at the presynaptic terminal cause voltage-gated calcium ion channels to open. Calcium ions diffuse into the cell and cause synaptic vesicles to release acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter molecule. Neurotransmitter molecules, acetylcholine, diffuse from the presynaptic terminal across the synaptic cleft and bind to their receptor sites on the ligand-gated sodium channels. This causes the ligand-gated sodium ion channels to open, and sodium diffuses into the cell, making the membrane potential more positive. If the membrane potential reaches threshold level, an action potential will be produced.
So it's the same thing as before. These bubbles release their contents. They attach to the next doors. The doors on the next cell. Sodium rushes in. Sodium is the little purple pink ones. Sodium rushes in, and that causes a new signal to be sent down the next neuron.
That's a good video.
Bro, do you have to know that word acetylcholine?
Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that activates your muscle cells. There are different neurotransmitters for different cells. So I don't know if your book says it, you have to know it. If not, you don't.
Wait, we're done.
Impulses traveling to and from the brain must move along the synaptic space that separates the axon and the dendrites. As an impulse reaches the end of an axon, calcium channels open, allowing calcium to enter the end of the axon. The calcium causes vesicles in the axon to fuse with the plasma membrane, releasing their chemicals called neurotransmitters into the synaptic space by exocytosis. These neurotransmitters diffuse across the space to the dendrites of the next neuron. As the neurotransmitters reach the dendrites, they signal receptor sites to open the ion channels. These open channels change the polarity in the neuron, initiating a new impulse.
Excellent. You see? So, your nervous system can control signals that move around your body, and your nervous system is what controls your muscles to contract. If you want to contract a muscle, you send a nerve signal down to your muscle, and like we said before, the muscle will contract in response. That's what I'm going to show you here. I'm going to hook up this machine. So let's go ahead and turn that off. Wheel this out.